Hi, this is Jennifer from Read It Again. Please join me while I read The Lighthouse Family, The Storm by Cynthia Rylant, chapters 4 through 6. Please consider subscribing, and if you enjoy this book, hit the like button. The Lighthouse Family, The Storm by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Preston McDaniels, chapters 4 through 6. Chapter 4, Companions. Everything at the lighthouse was different after Seabold's arrival. Mornings, when Pandora awoke, she remembered she had someone else to talk to. She leaped from bed and prepared a big breakfast of hot wheat cereal with cream and apple scones and bowls of huckleberries. She carried the tray to Seabold's room, and there they chatted all morning. Pandora's garden grew very weedy. Then, once Seabold was able to hobble about on his leg with the help of a walking stick, their talks moved outside. Sitting on large rocks by the water, Pandora and Seabold told each other stories of their lives and things they had read or seen, and what they liked most in this world, or least. Seabold told of his father, who feared the water and would not set foot in a boat. Pandora told of her younger sister, who sewed wedding gowns for queens. They both had read fairy tales as children and agreed that the bad animals were more interesting than the good ones. And what did they like best in the world? The northern lights, said Seabold. Penguins, said Pandora. Least, they both agreed, were shipwrecks. It was summer, and Pandora's lighthouse responsibilities were small. For 2 months, July and August, there was little rain and hardly any fog. Ships traveled safely, and Pandora got a rest. Well, somewhat. She still had to tend to preparing for the hard winter ahead. She knew she must grow and harvest vegetables, grind corn and wheat for bread, collect and cut driftwood for the fire. A supply boat had already delivered the year's kerosene for the lighthouse. All depended on Pandora being ready. While Pandora gardened in the day, Seabold worked as best he could, given his leg, on rebuilding his boat. He had indeed found it, at least most of it, farther down the shore, and though his heart broke to see it so battered, he believed he could save it. As Pandora gardened, she watched Seabold off in the distance, tending to his boat, and she felt a small emptiness in her heart. The emptiness one feels watching a dear friend prepared to go away. Evenings, the two made a picnic on the hill of daisies leading to the shore and watched the sun go down, painting the world pink and red. The next day, it all began again. Seabold was very curious about the workings of the lighthouse, but his leg would not permit him to climb the 4 steep flights of stairs, then ladder up into the lantern room to reach the great glass lamp. With no storms and no need for the saving lamp, Seabold sometimes forgot there was any lighthouse at all. But one day in early September, just as the geese and the mallards and the warblers were beginning to fly overhead on their long journeys south, Seabold was awakened to exactly what that enormous lighthouse was meant to do, and to just who prepared to do it. Chapter 5, The Storm. It was much too early in the season, Pandora thought, for a storm to blow in. It was the season for fog, yes, but for serious ocean storms, those were due much later in the fall. Then why, she wondered, one afternoon in early September, as she gathered tomatoes off the vines, was the sky growing so black? Why was the air so cold? Why were the gulls circling higher and higher, their cries growing more and more frantic? Because a sky above a sea loves unpredictability. It loves to surprise. This day it clearly intended to. Seabold and Pandora battened down his boat, secured the shutters over the cottage windows, and set to building a fire in the kitchen stove. "How cold is it?" said Seabold. "How cold it is," said Seabold, "and yesterday was so warm." "The sea is bringing us a different air," said Pandora. "One, I believe, full of danger. I must go up to the lantern room and attend to the light." Seabold looked at his still splintered leg in frustration. "I have to get up there to help you," he said. "No, no," said Pandora. "Injury to your leg now will set you back a month of healing. Just keep the fire going while I work." And while Seabold fed the fire in the kitchen and kept a pot of tea hot and ready for them both, Pandora climbed up to the lantern room. She trimmed the great lamp's wicks and lit them. She checked the kerosene vessel. She cleaned the storm panes. Then she climbed down to the watchroom. Just around supper time, an enormous fog bank rolled in. High in her tower, Pandora watched it spread toward land like creeping cotton, and she began to ring the bells and sound the horn that would guide smaller boats to shore, giving them escape from the storm that was surely about to hit. Down in the kitchen, Seabold fretted. He listened to the bells and the horns. "I could be doing that," he thought. "I could be helping." But he had to sit there by the fire and wait. He was miserable. Over the next few hours, the wind built to an astonishing speed, and its gusts rocked the tower Pandora worked in. She was undaunted. It was nightfall now, and this was a very bad storm for any ship at sea. Fog, lightning, lashing rain, hard wind, all could lead a ship into the rocks and sink her. Pandora worked in the watchroom, sounding the horn again and again. Above her, the great light kept its strong beam out upon the water. She was cold. She had no time to dress warmly or carry wood to the watchtower stove. But she could not stop to remedy this. It was a terrible storm, and she knew what a terrible storm could do. In the kitchen, Seabold sat by the window and watched the great light shine and listened to the warning horn. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. How did Pandora do it? Where did she find the strength? He was only tending the kitchen fire, and already he was tired. Finally, sleep got the better of him. The storm raged on without his witness. Bright sun shining into the kitchen woke Seabold the next morning. He had lain beside the stove all night. And where was Pandora? He looked out the window, and there she was, far out near the edge of a cliff, a shawl about her shoulders and her paw in the air waving. Off in the water, barely a spot on the horizon, was a sailing ship at rest, safe. She saved them, thought Seabold. He watched his friend in wonder. Chapter 6. Purpose. Seabold had planned to sail away by October's end, before the hard winter storms began, before the ice and wind. He was a sailing dog. The sea was his home. He knew this, and Pandora knew this, and they both were prepared for the sorrowful goodbye. But destiny had other plans. Seabold's boat did not come together as quickly as he'd hoped. Small essential pieces were still missing, and had to be made by hand. This would take time. This would take a long spring and a long summer, and perhaps an entire fall as well. Seabold was resourceful, but he could not invent time. And his leg was very slow in healing. It had been a bad break. And in spite of Pandora's marvelous herbs and capable splinting, the leg was weak. Seabold still walked with the aid of a stick. Thus, as the wind grew crisper and harder, and the sky filled with birds going away, Seabold stood at the edge of the shore and realized that this winter he would not sail. He thought that he would be despondent. He thought that he would be depressed. But he wasn't. Something had happened to him as he watched the noble efforts of Pandora save others to serve a purpose higher than herself. Seabold had been inspired, and he thought that perhaps, at least for one winter, he might also make his life count for something. So he asked if he might stay on till spring, and of course she said yes. It had been her secret wish. Together they gathered wood for the winter fires and food for winter sustenance. And Seabold was finally able to climb all the way up to the great lamp. He was astonished, seeing it for the first time. "It is magnificent," he said to Pandora. "It is a wonder." Seabold and Pandora polished the brass fittings of the great lamp. They disassembled and cleaned the lanterns. They replaced worn wicks. Being in the lantern room thrilled Seabold as much as even the finest sailing day, though he would not admit this to Pandora. And in the evenings, as Pandora knit warm caps and mittens and socks for them both, and as Seabold fashioned tools from driftwood, they talked. "I am astonished," said Seabold one night, "that I am not landsick by this time. I have never before been able to stay ashore so long without feeling my legs turn to stone." Pandora smiled and shifted the cap she was knitting for him. "I hope you will not be too unhappy with this lonely lighthouse life," she said. "Oh, no," said Seabold. "I am quite looking forward to it. I am hoping to be useful." "And you shall be," said Pandora. "I hope we will meet new friends," said Seabold, "as the days go by. Even if they were only passing through, I should like very much to know a whale." "The sea is full of surprises," said Pandora. "New friends among them." She looked at Seabold with a twinkle. "I should know," she said. "In spring," said Seabold, "before I finish the work on adventure, I will build a gazebo at the top of the daisy hill, and from there we may sit and see what comes our way." "Oh," answered Pandora, "many wonderful things. There shall be many wonderful things." She added another log to the fire. They both felt wonderfully warm.